guys really didn't need no introduction. They played last night at the Sandbar. It was really fantastic performance. Mr. Mark Turner and Ethan Iverson.
Well, Mark and I are not exactly licensed professionals when it comes to giving a master class.
True.
Probably what we'll do is we'll play something and then take questions.
That's all right.
We don't have our PowerPoint, how do you play jazz presentation all lined up the way we really probably ought to for something like this. We just spoke, we're sort of a little dazed and confused. I think we'll just warm up with a ballad here and play Billy Strayhorn's Chelsea Bridge.
Happy. Very happy.
Hey,
Cool. All right.
so any questions? Can be about that or anything else. Yep.
How do you guys approach composing music? Composing jazz tunes?
Right. Well, I mean, I suspect a theme that'll be something Mark and I will both be saying in this workshop is we probably both just try to imitate the stuff we like. You know, so like when I was in high school, I loved Thelonious Monk. I still do, but I learned every Monk tune. That's like a dictionary of jazz compositions in a way, like the 40 Monk tunes. So if you learn the 40 Monk tunes, then you write your own jazz tunes, sort of like, well, that's sort of what Monk did, but then I'll do it this way. That's already, it's going to be a pretty solid structure. You know, I love classical music too. I love contemporary classical music. There's stuff on Temporary Kings, the album that we just put out, which is sort of like my interpretation of certain ideas that I've heard from there. You know, nothing comes from nowhere probably. So it's just me trying to be like the stuff I already like. I will say that in my own sort of world of composition, which is very much influenced by Monk, is that if I find a good idea, that's the hard part in a way, is finding a charismatic idea. But if you have one little charismatic idea, you can just apply operations to it to create a piece of composition. You know, that part is sort of straightforward in a way. And that's certainly what Monk did. He came up with one, like a bar, 2 bars. Here's a melody and rhythm that's charismatic. That's a hit. So, okay, I got these 2 hit bars. All I have to do is move them around a little bit, and I've got a great piece of music.
Yeah, I agree. Not much else to say after that. Well, I mean, one thing definitely is I just like to reiterate, basically writing tunes that are influenced, sound like, or feel like music that you like. I find that very important. Pretty much everything I've written is either influenced by or maybe even a copy of, if you want to call it that, but of course it'd be my version of some music that I like, a contemporary, meaning a friend of mine, or music by a master, or from the classical music world as well. So for example, the tune we played yesterday, Myron's World, was directly a derivative of a tune that Myron Walden wrote that's also 16 bars, exactly the same. And then I wrote my own tune. And, you know, just your own human ingenuity, your own humanness will make it sound like you. There's nothing to worry about in terms of whether you're going to sound like yourself or not. You know, yourself is your attraction, and also your attraction and your feelings about things that you don't like. That's yourself speaking to you. All you have to do is just follow what it says and apply some musical craft and knowledge to that, and you'll come up with some good tunes. So the other thing I would say about composition, at least from my part, is once I have an idea or two, I started to compile forms that I like. You know, just write them down. Like, oh, this song sounds good. It's A, B, C, or it's an interlude in the middle and, you know, like A, interlude A, whatever it is. I just started to compile enough of them so that I'm not going on inspiration alone when I write. Another thing is that I took this, or actually I asked a friend, Guillermo Klein. Anybody know who Guillermo Klein is? Yes, no, okay. So I took a little bit of a class of his and asked him how he writes, so he gave me a lot of information as well. So basically, I just look for as many tools as I can to get something going, basically, and then I just sit down. Maybe I'll start for the month, and I just sit down and write like 10 o'clock every day. I just go for it, and I usually write in the morning. I can't find anything at night. Morning is my creative hours, and I just, you know, I just make it happen. Even if I feel no inspiration, I just use some of these tools to make something happen. So I can talk about this later, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you compose, so if you're composing every morning, do you find that you throw out a large portion of it, or it becomes fodder for new material?
It
or do you
becomes fodder for new material. I usually don't throw anything out. Rarely, you know. And this isn't every morning like 365 days a year. It's periods where I have to get something done, and I'll just sit down and write almost every day for a while. And, you know, out of that might come one tune after a month, you know, or maybe 5 tunes or nothing, you know. But I just do it, you know.
I personally feel like if it's a big project, having a huge false start can be part of the game.
Yeah, definitely part of the game.
You know, like, I like that actually. A few times I've started something and then like, yeah, I throw it out. I'm like, okay, well it started the process, you know. So but it's not, I certainly never regard it as a waste. It's actually great to be able to make so much stuff that, you know, you can get rid of a lot of it. This great author, Daniel Pinkwater, who's sort of an influence on me, he told me that you should be so productive as a creative artist that you make some for the bandits, because there's always like some bandits that come along or whatever. You know, it's like in anything you do in this life, it doesn't have to be artistic. It can just be like whatever, running a whiskey store. Some bandits are going to come and take some of that whiskey, for sure. So, like, all right, fine, just make sure you be so productive that a certain percentage of it can just be like by the wayside or lost, stolen, not good, whatever any of that stuff is.
I hear that.
You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. One thing I'm just going to add, a new thing for me, but maybe not new for others. So Ethan already knows this. I wrote a suite recently based on a book. And, you know, just to be transparent, you know, at one point I was very against doing that. I used to think that that was kind of a easy way to escape to writing music. It wasn't pure in some ways, you know, having a concept and then writing some music that's of lesser value just to have a concept there so you can sell your product. And there might be some of that out there, I would say, but I decided to just try it because I was sort of studying with Guillermo Klein at the time, and I found it very helpful just to organize my thoughts. At first I used it just as an inspiration, and I wasn't going to use the book at all. I just use it as a way to organize at least 11 songs. And I found that it is very helpful in giving at least some direction to what I was going to write for each tune. And after that, it was very easy to kind of come up with some ideas, some hits like Ethan was saying, and then write some compositions about them. And then, you know, basically after that, it flows. And now there are 11 songs, which I've never written that fast in my life. So it was very helpful. So anyway, it's another thing.
I would say, at your stage, if you're like in college or whatever, you know, and you're in jazz, try to write a great 12-bar blues. Might not be as easy as you think.
Oh, definitely not.
Try to write a
It's
great
very
rhythm
hard.
changes.
Yeah.
They all did it. There's no significant jazz composer who didn't write a good rhythm changes. And they all wrote a bunch of great blues tunes. You know, try to write a ballad in the Billy Strayhorn tradition. Try to write a Chelsea Bridge. A, everything 8 bars. See how easy it is to write a good one. You know?
Super hard. I've avoided it for a long time myself. No, because I know it's hard. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
So, if you're into that stuff, write a fugue. If you're into that stuff, write a sonata form. You know, it's some of the stuff that is out there. You know, it's this blending of classical music and jazz music and all that sort of stuff, where all the influences actually aren't that well digested. You know, it's like, well, I know a little bit about contemporary classical music, and I know a little bit about jazz, and now I'm going to write this, you know, piece in 7/8 with some weird pitches. All right. Boy, the truth hurts. I just felt that. That was like a proper 1-2 right there, right? So I'm just saying, okay, what's actually better is to study some blues, study some 12-tone compositions, try to write a 2-part invention, write a sonata form, write a Billy Strayhorn ballad. You know, in New Orleans, okay, write a second line. Do all that stuff, and then let the combination of it, just in the back of your subconscious, if you get that stuff together, you'll be able to put some stuff out there that'll just really sound like you know.
So yesterday our rehearsal ended about 1:30. The gig was at 7. Both of you guys in between were like shedding pretty much a big chunk of the time. And Mark, you made the comparison yesterday to our performances like athletes and
Yeah.
what goes into maintaining your chops so you feel like, you know, you're ready to perform. Can you just talk a little bit about, you know, I guess going on tour and performing in these different places and what you need to do to be prepared, you feel, to perform?
yeah, I guess we can both talk on that, you know. As a woodwind player, so there are a few things that I do. I think we both have friends that don't warm up, right? That they just go up and play. I won't mention names, and they sound great, you know. So I'm not one of those people. I cannot do that, you know. Luckily I play an instrument where I can practice in my hotel room if I need to. So Ethan, for example, cannot, but he makes sure he goes in early to the venue, ask ahead of time, hey, can I practice or whatever. So not many piano players do that. For example, FYI, if you guys don't know that. So what I do is I kind of make sure that I'm kind of into exercising and stuff. That really helps me a lot, just because you know, you're traveling around in time zones. You've been on a train or a plane for 6 hours. It just helps me a lot when I just feel more awake and my body doesn't feel like shit, basically. It just helps me play better. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's good when you feel bad, actually. I'm kind of serious about that.
Right.
But it just kind of helps me be more awake and more willing to do things when I don't feel like doing them. And then I usually, I just have a warm-up routine, which helps me to, usually I practice with the metronome and without, but the one where I'm really stressed or where I got to make sure it's happening and I feel terrible on the horn, I can't play, I feel, you know, technique isn't happening, my sound is not happening. I put the metronome on as low as possible. It depends. Some metronomes, one I have now goes down to 30. I might start at 20 or 10. And I'll start with really slow, usually like if I have time, if I have like 2 hours. I might start at quarter notes. And gradually I work up to 30-second notes. And the way I do that is duple, triple, duple, triple. So, you know, quarter notes, then quarter note triplets, then 8 notes, 8-note triplets, so on and so forth. I speed up by doing that. Then when I get to 30-second notes, then I speed the metronome up. And I keep it going 30-second notes all the way up to 30-second notes at 50. So I guess that's, what is that, 400, 200? I'm not
Pretty
sure.
fast.
So I just do that until really slowly, until I get really fast. And so as a horn player, or at least a woodwind player, what you want to do is, while you're doing that, you're basically, I usually do like 4 patterns, and I do these 4 patterns, 4 or more. They all do different things. And basically what I'm trying to do is just get my airflow going. Because basically what you're doing is you're dealing with your embouchure, but you're trying to get also, much of your sound also comes from your fingers, woodwind players. That's what I was taught. If you haven't been taught that, then everyone has a different method, but a lot of your sound comes from your fingers, as well as up here. So I just try to manage that so I can get my sound going. And basically what I'm trying to do is get everything to sound like one note, no matter how slow, fast, or how many intervals I'm jumping. So that my sound gets larger, even though I'm blowing with the same amount of force over time. So anyway, that's what I do. And sometimes, basically what I want is a ruler, a measuring stick. And when I can get to 50 at these various patterns, I at least have a measuring stick to know where I am on the instrument, as opposed to just playing anything and just seeing how it feels. I can't really tell where I am. Why? Because I've been traveling in a different time zone. My mind is in a different place. I want something that tells me this is it. Not like I'm not sure, not artsy. Just like a skilled laborer, this is where I am. Now I'm ready to go. So that's kind of why I do that. And then if I have time, I'll do other things to just more creative things, like play some tunes, do different keys. I'll take a few tunes and play them through all 12 keys, or blues or rhythm changes, for example, work through some lines and take them to the keys and things like that, or work through some melodies. There's a certain way that I do that, but I won't go into that now. But I'll do those things after I've taken care of this. And then I'm kind of ready to go. Just like any person that has a job, you can be like a plumber, a carpenter, something like that. Nothing artsy about it. Just this is what has to happen. So that, basically, when the people that are coming to pay $35, $50, $25, or whatever it is to hear you play, you're ready to bring something to them as an expert as what you do. So that's it. Yeah.
I guess I could say maybe if I had done more practicing when I was a young person, I probably need to practice less now. I feel like I'm catching up. I've always been actually essentially pretty lazy, and
Is that true?
yes, it is kind of true, I would say. But I've gotten less lazy over the years, and when you're young and moderately athletic, I think it's a really good time to try to play as fast as possible, as loud as possible, all these kinds of things, because it's only going to get harder as you get older to do things like
that motion.
to play fast and loud, And I don't mean loud like bad, horrible fusion jazz or something like that. I mean that implies a lot of things. Like a lot of my least favorite music is obsessed with being fast and loud, but I've discovered that all of my favorite vulnerable, soulful musicians who don't play so many notes and are just pure artists actually have mind-blowing facility. We both like this trumpeter, Tom Harrell, for example. Vulnerable, white guy, plays kind of slow. Wow, I can be like Tom Harrell. Actually, guy's Muhammad Ali of the trumpet. It's rough. His chops, it's totally rough. Tom Harrell. You know what I mean?
It's super true, though.
So same thing like with, whatever, Thelonious Monk. It's like, well, I can imitate Monk because he doesn't play so fast. Then you get out there and you try to make a sound at the piano like Thelonious Monk. It's actually a technique that's really powerful. He never plays a wrong note.
Never. It's
He
true.
made so many gigs, so many records. It's always, every articulation, every accent lands like the force of a powerful boxer the whole time. So, I was hoping, when I was young, I was like, well, I'll just play more like Monk and like the white soulful poets. But I wish I had done more serious chops building.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, which is helpful, is just that aspect that he's talking about, is that you basically want, I kind of tell my kids this sometimes, like whenever you're spending an effort to go for something, let's say your technique, your ability to play, your writing to some extent, but especially your playing, think about it like if you had to jump across a chasm that was 1,000 feet down and it was, let's say, 6 feet across, maybe 8, you might be able to make it. Would you try to jump so you just make it, or would you fucking jump so you could try to get 12 feet? You know what I'm saying? That's the way you should fucking play. So you may not use all the extra stuff, but you want to fucking be ready. You know? That's what I tell myself. Now, I can't always do it, but that's what I try for. So, okay, that's it.
You had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could maybe both speak to your experiences of like starting an ensemble or starting a project, especially something like with a specific name, like something like that that kind of becomes like a very specific entity in the world, and but also like how your duo project, like how you come to form that kind of relationship and how it grows.
Well, the duo is, the first thing I would say is that with anything, the more organic it is, the better. You know, Bad Plus was 3 guys who had known each other since they were, well, the bassist and drummer knew that were playing music together at age 13, and they still play music together at age 48. You know, I met them when I was a little. I'm younger than Reed and Dave, but I met them when I was a senior in high school. There's some sort of folklore that we shared, you know, so eventually when the band started, we were all in our early 30s, we knocked around the world, and when we came back together, there was some sort of agreed folklore. It's like, okay, here's this thing, and it feels natural and it feels like it's powerful. Let's give it a band name and go for it. Mark Turner duo, we've been playing with Billy Hart for well over a decade. Not a whole lot, but a couple times a year, you know, enough to really develop something. And there were a lot of spaces over the years. Billy Hart was the one who said he really wanted to play more free music, and we'd be playing free music. And there'd be spaces with just the 2 of us playing, and I felt it was special and comfortable. And I guess I was the one, Manfred Eicher at ECM wanted me to do a project for him, and I suggested duo with Mark, but it was also organic. You know, it wasn't like, let me have let me do a brand new thing for a brand new day. It was like, well, this is something that's going to roll forward. Something that wasn't going to be too artificial. So probably most of the stuff that has real weight as a project, I suspect even historically, but certainly in my life, it tends to happen pretty naturally over time.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So maybe the only memorable, lasting situation maybe would be probably Kurt Rosenwinkel's band, the first quartet. So that happened in a similar way, same thing. You know, it was totally organic. I knew Kurt in Boston, and Ben I think I met maybe in France somewhere, he says, I don't remember. And then Jeff, maybe I met him as soon as I got to New York, along with Larry Grenadier, played a session. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And then Kurt had started a trio with them in Spain just before coming back, and then I was actually living in New Orleans, and I came back. There's a whole scene of people playing at that time, probably many people you would know. Jorge Rossi was playing then, used to play with Brad Meldau. Seamus Blake was cheap, Dan Reeser, a lot of people. Anyway, and then I kind of reconnected with Kurt through a session, and I'd already known Jeff and Ben, so started rehearsing with them. And then, you know, we started playing at Smalls every Tuesday, you know, in New York, like 3 months at a time or more. And we rehearsed every week, multiple times, and then it was mostly Kurt's music, but it started happening on its own, really. So, you know, that's all I can say, really, you know.
One thing that might be helpful is to try to work with people that you want to hear their voice. You know, and in some way, the less you can talk about it, the better.
Definitely.
You know, the archetypal example is the greatest jazz composer is Duke Ellington. And it's not just Duke Ellington, it's all the people that were in his band. You know, and all the fans of Duke Ellington know the names of all the galaxy of the people that made up that Ellington sound. You know, that's kind of the Platonic ideal, really. You know, so if, so you know, I know something about this. Mark's got a new suite for quintet, and I know in Mark's mind, I'm just gonna guess here, but I suspect that, but there's no point in even trying to do it if he's not gonna hire people he doesn't love,
Yeah.
and that he doesn't have to explain anything to.
Yeah.
That he wants to hear, even though it's a new conceptual project, he wants to hear the way everybody plays, how they play. You know, and that there's going to be times where, yeah, you have to say stuff or whatever, you know what I mean? But that's, in a sense, that's the European tradition. That's the Brahms writing for an orchestra. Okay, there's 100 people, I'm going to tell you all exactly what to do. But American music has this other kind of power. You can say it's like democratic or whatever, you know. But there is some truth to that there's this way that even in the jazz orchestra of Duke Ellington, everybody had their say. Everybody was required for this kind of large group music to work. It goes doubly and triply so for small group jazz. Yeah.
Yeah, just going on that, like, how do you market a band that's kind of genre bending and doesn't really fit into a box?
Well, you know,
What was your question?
The question is, how do you market a band that's genre bending and doesn't fit into a box? I would say that if the music is incredible, you'll get it heard. You know, that's my first guess about it. You know, it's not the hardest thing in the world to say your music is genre bending. You know what I mean? That doesn't require real resolution on the behalf of the artist. You can be like, my music blends genres. It's putting new stuff together. Let's hear it. If it's really killing, it'll probably get a chance to be heard.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I hope it is killing. And I wish you luck.
Could you talk about like some of the things you're doing range-wise on the piano? Like I was listening last night, I was like, man, it's getting kind of low down there, but I like it.
Well, thank you very much. Well, okay, the first thing that comes to mind is that there is a way that jazz piano is taught. I don't know what's happening here, and I think things have really changed for the better. But at a certain point in jazz education, it felt like the left hand was told a table of Bill Evans or Herbie Hancock voicings, and that's what you play down there. You know, however, that's like received wisdom. That's not like the truth. That's like some received wisdom. That's some guys like Mark Levine, who's not even a great player, writing a book called The Jazz Piano Book, and this is how you do it. You know what I mean? That's like, it ain't true. It's just a way to market teaching jazz harmony. Give Mark Levine some checks. And I mean, it's fine, that book is fine if you're a beginner. But I was at the New Orleans Jazz Museum today and looking at the Professor Longhair exhibit. Like, that ain't received wisdom. Blues piano played by Professor Longhair, that's actual music. That's actually what a major artist played on the piano. And in the history of jazz piano, they actually, as I'm sure you know, they actually played down there plenty back in the day, right? But even Bud Powell is much lower than what a table of Bill Evans and Herbie Hancock voicings is. But, does Bud Powell not play jazz correctly? No, he's actually the greatest. That is, so what's the problem? There's something that's missing there, right? Okay, McCoy Tyner plays the top of every blues with a huge low fifth. Well, if you do that in front of a certain kind of square jazz educator, they're going to be like, I don't know, I think you should mix it up and be more creative. But does that make it better than McCoy Tyner? Are you actually going to make a ruling that McCoy Tyner is breaking the rules rather than he is the rule book? I actually think Bud Powell and McCoy Tyner, that's the rule book, right? Those tables of jazz piano voicings, it's like whatever. Just get that shit away from you. Once you know something about harmony, I mean, it's a fine building block. You know, it's fine. But it's just like, what did they actually play? And specifically about some of that low stuff, I have this guy, Herbie Nichols, who's not too famous, but I was pretty into him at a certain point. He played low all the time. And then in a duo situation, I'm obviously, with Mark, I'm very influenced by the European classical tradition. I played a lot of that stuff. I played a lot of Chopin, I played a lot of Beethoven. I love all that stuff. But, you know, Rachmaninoff, you know, I can't sit and offhand play a bunch of it right now for you, but I could play some of it at a B level. You know, I'm not going to get an A, but that I actually think is the jazz tradition too. I think all the greats fooled around with European classical music. It's impossible to ignore. This piano repertoire is incredible. Some of the greatest stuff humanity has produced are those European composers and that incredible piano repertoire. That's a whole lifetime of study. You don't have to get all the way in there if you're a jazz pianist, but I think McCoy Tyner knew it. I think Bud Powell knew it. Teddy Wilson, Art Tatum, whatever. Herbie Hancock. Herbie Hancock played a Mozart concerto when he was in high school with the orchestra. You know, he said, he says in an interview, it's great. I'm about to go outdo it with Chick Corea, so I'm reading through Scriabin, Hindemith, the Slavinsky Book of Scales, and Debussy. He's checking that out, and then he'll go out and improvise with Chick Corea. You know, but that's sort of like getting his mind going and his chops going in a certain direction, because he knows to do it with Chick Corea, he better get ready. You know? Time to play some Scriabin. You know, so. The low stuff, whatever I'm doing is just in all of that, you know. Specifically, Chelsea Bridge, I'll give you a little secret here. This is really valuable info I'm about to lay out. It's gonna rock your world, okay? I like film noir and I like old Hollywood scores. And so an evocative piece like that, which is Billy Strayhorn's response to a foggy bridge in England, I'm gonna try to make this sound like a film noir score a little bit. And I know that's concentrated jazz info too, because those great cats in the age of segregation, they didn't always get a chance to hear or study a lot of orchestral scores maybe at home, but they could go to the silver screen and watch Lana Turner being romanced by the latest heartthrob and hear that orchestral music. Yeah. And that's how it got into their sound. That's how John Coltrane or Wayne Shorter or whatever, all those guys talked about the movies. You start Wayne Shorter off on movies, we'd still be here 2 days later. He'll just talk to you about movies, you know what I mean? And the scores for the Red Shoes and other 50s, 40s, and 50s movies. I mean, his list of favorite science fiction movies goes for hundreds of pages, and that's in Wayne Shorter's music. All of those science fiction scores. You know. So yeah, everything comes from somewhere.
Can you guys talk a little bit about ways to work on recall?
Wait, what did you just do? That was amazing. Can you say total recall to that? You mean memorization, you mean?
Yeah, just stretching that type of thing out. You know, maybe you have to you know, as a sax player, you might have to memorize a long head, or, you know, you guys worked on the Vet Plus worked on memorizing portions of the Rite of Spring, or, you know, anything in music, whether it's just repertoire in general too.
I don't know. Ethan might have more to say because he's memorized, you know, more notes than I have.
It really makes it sound like you're a much better musician when you say that. I'm still there like looking at a lot of Mark Turner's in the Clouds, like I'm just playing great, and yeah, well, I guess he's learned a lot of notes.
No, I don't mean it that way. I mean you have more to memorize. You know, that's actually the opposite is what I was trying to say. But anyway, at least for me, recall is directly related to learning things orally. You know, just reading something. I mean, I can do it, but I have a hard time memorizing. But unless I learn something from a record or someone teaches something to me. So it's better if you know, especially if I learn a tune, if I can't, usually you can find it on YouTube or recording, but you know, if I'm on a session or something and I don't know the tune, I'd rather just play it and try to learn, and then if I'm not sure, I just ask the piano player, bass player to just play for me, and don't tell me the chords. I don't like people to tell me what it is. So I just use my ears. And basically for memorizing something, I need to have some kind of effort. If something is difficult, it requires effort, then I remember it. You know, if it's too easy, like reading, then I tend not to remember it. You know, so just like I was mentioning to two saxophone players earlier, you know, if you can think back on some situations in your life where you did things that are easy, like you know, like what did you eat for the last 6 months? What shoes were you wearing? How exactly did you tie your shoes this morning? You're not going to remember that stuff, but you will remember things like events in your life, things that were difficult or where you experienced a lot of pleasure, you know. So those are the things that help me remember something. So usually when I'm memorizing a tune or some chord changes or something, I usually do something over the tune that requires me to remember it, even if I just played in another key, that will do it. Or especially playing tunes through the keys, you learn it. If you play at least 2 keys, at least, I would do all 12, but then you're going to learn the tune, you know. And if I have a version in my head. And then I do things over the tune, voice leading, things like that on the horn or on the piano to help me remember it, you know. So if it's a line, like a long Warren Marsh type line or something like that, there's no secret to that, just do it over and over again. That's it. You know, play in another key, then that helps, you know, or at least parts of it in another key, that will help, you know.
Betty Carter would audition pianists by asking them to play Skylark in a strange key. You know, and actually I do think transposition is one of the great helpful tools. Like if you transpose the songs, you know, you might be really surprised at how comfortable it feels when you go back to the original key, you know. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. The first time you do it, it might really feel hard. But if you keep at it, it gets easier. And I would say that's one of the most helpful things I ever did was a lot of transposition. I still do it.
Yeah, likewise. I just want to add to that too is I find that transposition tunes, but especially rhythm changes, blues and Cherokee, I mean, you just got to do it. You know, if you just did everyone, whatever, I'm just going to say it. I do it for myself. If you just do that, even if you just did it 5 times a week, if you did it every day, even if you just did it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes every day, you would be so fucking good. You'd be surprised all the things that you would get from doing it, you know.
Blues, rhythm changes, and Cherokee.
Yeah, they give you everything you need. You know, you will have played through all the keys, all the types of changes of chord changes that you're going to run into. You know, you will have done them every key. You'll get all the ear training you'll need. Your ears will be strong and flexible. You know, your language. You know, just language alone will be. You'll work out all the language you need in all the keys. You have everything you need was there. I'm just saying.
Both Coltrane and Charlie Parker talk about transposition as well in the interviews.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, you know, teachers talk about it all the time, and then somehow I always feel like students are incredulous, like, oh, okay, whatever. If you actually do it, you'll be surprised. So that's it. I'm not going to say anything else.
It goes to 3:15, the class?
Yeah, a few more minutes, 10 more minutes.
All right, we want to take one more
I just
question?
have to ask Mark, maybe if I was just on this kind of totally different direction, but you had an unfortunate run with power tools.
Oh, that's true. I did, yes.
What was that all about? What happened?
I was just working on, you know, my house. I had some power tools, you know, trying to save money. Anyway, yeah, I was cutting some wood, and I cut the tendons and nerves in these two fingers, severed them completely. Not the fingers, but all the way down to the bone. Yeah, and then, so, yeah, and I got the first, so I went to the emergency room. It was actually election night, 2008, and my wife, who's a psychiatrist, knew where to go in terms of, there's a hospital right next to us, which is notorious, so she said, no, we're going to go to Park Slope, which is a slightly higher income neighborhood and has a better hospital as usual. So we went there, and then I went to there's a plastic surgeon. He was the only one. Sometimes they do repair for ligaments and fingers. Anyway, he basically told me, I can do it, but I can't guarantee that your fingers are going to move again. So, and he was the only person that was there, so I was like, wow. So, okay, that was it. And then I was supposed to do a tour and recording with a friend, and I just had to tell him, okay, it's canceled because I may not be able to play, either in a few months or ever. And then he knew a friend of a friend who made a call and found a surgeon who's a specialist in this kind of thing. And then luckily I got referred that night, and it has to happen within 3 days. If it doesn't, then that's it. Your fingers will bend, but they won't move anymore. They'll just be like this, and that's it. So yeah, I got lucky and ran into a surgeon that was able to work on them. So he fixed them basically, and then I did like 3 to 4 months of rehab, which basically means you have to do these exercises with your fingers every hour for 12 hours every day for 3 months. Otherwise, your fingers will never move again. That's what they told me. So I did exactly what they said. And it worked. I got lucky. So, yeah.
I hate hearing that story. Okay, one more question.
Sorry, me talk about movie. What did you work on musically in that time when you couldn't play?
Nothing. It's actually the first break I ever had, and I just stayed at home, watched C-SPAN, because that's the only channel we got.
God, it's brutal. C-SPAN?
We didn't have cable. Or no, we
Wow.
didn't have TV.
I already hated the story. Now I
Yeah, I just, cooked and read books, listened to music, that's it.
We all class another 10.
Okay, quick one to finish.
All right.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Thank you.